Coventry and the RotoWire YouTube channel. I was off last week. It was a glorious time, Jim, but I'm actually really excited to go over a lot of relevant questions, whether it be at quarterback, certainly many on tight end. I had my waiver wire article on Monday and then the update on Tuesday, and love that you guys were following along, that we've been kind of going through this all season. A lot of questions in specific relation to Colby Parkinson. What do we do with the tight ends, kind of like low-end tight end one? I think it's going to be a very interesting start-sit stuff, and you and I both have the philosophy, if you are likely in the fantasy playoffs, either the starting playoffs or more than likely semifinals, play your studs, right? I've been getting a lot of like Bowers or X pickup, whatever else. But I think there's actually really, really interesting dilemmas if you are kind of in the what do I do post Patrick Mahomes, who of course had the unfortunate ACL tear? What do you do with that spot if you're trying to find a quarterback streamer? And even at running back. So there's a lot to get to, Jim. And the reason we kicked off a little bit late today actually was updating the news from Tua Tagovailoa being benched by the Dolphins. Not entirely surprising since he was going to be an offseason cut by the Dolphins at some point here. I'm not a Quinn Ewers guy whatsoever. I really wasn't when he was coming out of college either. I know there are people who are Texas backers who are going to be telling you X, Y, and Z thing. Tua has not been a very good quarterback this year. The Dolphins have watched Quinn Ewers all season long. If they thought Quinn was a significantly better or even mildly appropriate option, they would have made the switch sooner. So I think that speaks to really all you need to have from the Dolphins offense. However, we've seen a bunch of backup quarterbacks here of late. Brady Cook, for example. Like, I think Ewers is probably a little bit higher on that tier if you are in the quarterback streamer market. And again, just like overall, what do we think from this Dolphins offense? Whether it be Devon Achane, Darren Waller has been a popular conversation topic point as well, too, in the waiver article, and even Jalen Waddle. All three of these guys have been at least mild consideration for playoff teams in the immediate future here.
Joe, as we talk about this, these teams, like a 7th-round draft pick, Quinn Ewers, the teams want to take a look at these quarterbacks so they know what to do going forward. They don't assume the player's the answer. But the reason we saw Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, he got dinged up a slight bit, but then it's we got to see what we got. They already knew what they had in him. So I think that's all they're doing with Ewers. They want to see what they need to do next year. Tua's terrible, okay? And I've been saying for years he has a pop gun for an arm, and he consistently underthrows the ball. All that said, this is what teams are doing. They're in evaluation mode right now.
Yeah, and I mean, we're the valuing the Dolphins offense in particular. The same sort of thing as Tyler Shuck for the Saints, who we'll talk about in a second, because actually he's kind of in that sort of low-end quarterback one streamer range, especially if you're in 2 QB formats. But I think the Dolphins, where they're considering the change at Tua or Quinn Ewers, for example, is there more checkdowns in sight for Darren Waller and Devon Achane? Is it going to be that maybe the offense opens up? We saw Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Dolphins, say the quarterback play wasn't what we want it to be against the Steelers on Monday. I don't know what that really means, though. Like, is Tua not getting the ball out quick enough, or is the ball not going downfield enough? Like, what is Quinn Ewers supposed to be doing differently that Mike McDaniel wants?
Again, I just think it's evaluation mode.
Okay.
I don't think it's anything more of Ewers is better than Tua. They know Tua's not the answer. Internally, they've known this for a long time, but they were tied to his contract. Since they signed that contract, and that's because we're always desperate for quarterbacks, right? Mm-hmm. But they know he's not the answer. So at some point, they just had to say, all right, we got to turn the page on this. They will never go anywhere with him, right? So that said, and I see we have a question. Do we trust Achane? Well, look, Defense didn't respect Tua. You can't respect Ewers any less than you do respect the Tua. No defense worried about him. He can't throw deep, so everybody compacted it. The Dolphins' offensive line is very good run blocking to the outside, and that's where Achane is a killer, and Achane's going to be Achane, and Ewers is going to have these easy ones. Dump it to Achane. Waller, like you said, he's a slot receiver, tight end, but against Cincinnati, you can't defend the middle of the field. Oh, well, there you go. You're going to have Waddle running a lot of crossers. It's going to be a lot of stuff that's either to his side, Weaver's side, or right in front of his face. They're not going to have him throwing complicated downfield throws with multiple receivers in the pattern. So the offense is already been simplified for a limited quarterback. That works at Ewers' advantage to at least move the ball a little bit.
That's a good point. Let's get to the quarterbacks here, and I actually have a bunch of questions overall. Let's start first with number 5 on the weekly ranking here. Again, if you're watching this live on the YouTube channel, you can see Jim's rankings. This is something that basically you're referencing when you're doing the Sunday start sit as well, too. Obviously, information that happens for the practice reports can change things a little bit. We have multiple games being played Saturday. It's not the be-all, end-all, like this is who you choose to start, but Jacoby Brissett is quarterback 5 entering the fantasy semifinals. That is a crazy number to me, and one that I don't know if I can really push back on. Like, I think I'd rather play Drake May given the rushing upside, but Joe Burrow against the Dolphins defense, the way they've been playing as of late, I don't mind that. Jackson Dart's always a concussion risk as well, too. You never want to have him. If you really need to have that, like Jacoby Brissett at quarterback 5 is crazy to me, and I think it's absolutely a totally fine call against this Falcons defense, which has just been coming apart at the seams toward the latter half of the season.
Joe, Jacoby Brissett's played 9 games. His worst game was 22 fantasy points.
That's crazy.
That's quarterback 1. He has had a tough schedule. He played Houston, and he lit it up against Houston. I don't care if it's garbage time. Makes no difference.
Right.
Every 9 straight weeks, Jacoby Brissett's been a QB1. What's the downside, right? And you love it. And this game with Atlanta, I know both teams stink. This is shootout potential, especially if Drake London's back. This game could be like 34-31. And look, Arizona ain't running the ball. They're terrible running the ball. So what do they have to do? Chuck it to Michael Wilson and, of course, Trey McBride all day, every day. And it doesn't even matter if Harrison's there because they've already shown that's irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, it's and even if you said Marvin Harrison's stats, we'll have to see. Again, he had kind of not aggravated, a separate issue, kept him out last week. I don't think we've had really positive language that he'll play this week for Marvin Harrison too. And we saw Bam Knight, the running back for the Cardinals. He was placed on injured reserve yesterday. Michael Carter, I think it's more of an opportunity. We'll get to the running backs here in a little bit. Yeah, but I mean, Brissett probably is in must-play territory. There's one league where I've made the fantasy semifinals where I have Jordan Love, Jackson Dart, and Bo Nix, and Jacoby Brissett is available, and I'm like, I don't need a 4th quarterback. I could probably drop one of these guys, but I think I'm picking up Brissett, even though I've been basically trying to stream that spot the entire year. I think he has been effectively automatic, and even if the Falcons' pass rush is good, their defense has been overall very bad this year. I think Brissett is in the correct call. Somebody asked, do I start Brissett over Prescott? I am doing that. I would absolutely make that call, and I think Prescott is in a little bit of a tougher spot. Let's get to number 9 on the list, and there's going to be a lot of talk about the Packers and Bears and being one of the better matchups. And, of course, tomorrow's game, Seahawks-Rams, also being very interesting. Really kind of also interested in this Panthers-Buccaneers game. Nobody wants to win the NFC South. They're going to get curb stomped by whoever they end up playing in the playoffs. It doesn't matter. But arguably, these are two offenses that we kind of have some fantasy utility in, or at least in the case of the Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield right now, low-end quarterback 1 territory. You have him ranked above Dak Prescott, above Brock Purdy, and above C.J. Stroud, who I actually liked a lot. I would maybe have Stroud higher against this Raiders defense. So what is it with Baker Mayfield kind of being in this range where you still have to play him?
The band is back, and they had 11 days off, and the team was ticked after that loss. Now, the vibes may just be bad all year. And maybe it doesn't get better. But we saw, at least with Mike Evans back, Mayfield could be inaccurate, but he can be inaccurate to a 6'5", 231 dude because he's got a pretty big wingspan, right? Mm-hmm. And the connection with Godwin's been okay. And Jalen McMillan's back another week. And, Carolina's got some good coverage people, but they got 4 dudes now. And you can increase the snap share this week for Evans. You can increase the snap share for McMillan. And Ibuka, obviously he'll see less and less coverage, shading as the games go on. So I just think at the end of the day, they're going to have to score some points. Now, I just put a downside tag on Mayfield. I should have put it there. Bucky Irving could have a game here. This is a game where Carolina's not a good run defense, and Irving could get going. But I still think, ultimately, Baker has 4 weapons, and he'll run the ball. We've seen now he picked that back up. It's a nerve-wracking start. That whole range, quarterbacks 9 through 14, very nerve-wracking range. They're all close. They're all like an eyelash apart.
Well, let's expand on this because Herbert at 13 is really, really interesting to me. The Cowboys' defense has just been atrociously bad, stopping anybody passing the ball. But Chargers' offensive line has been atrociously bad all season long. It's limited any sort of upside that Herbert might have. I have Herbert in an NFFC league where it's 6 points per passing touchdown. I'm default to playing him there because I think the upside is warranted. But in your standard formats where it is 4 points per passing touchdown and the offensive line issues, Herbert is making his fantasy dues because he is running due to how bad the offensive line play has been. What is it here? Because this is the reverse of the immovable object kind of thing. It's the stoppable force thing. I think Herbert still is in the consideration play for me. And again, I like CJ Stroud a lot. I would have a real hard time playing Stroud or Herbert, one or the other. I think both are kind of in a really good play for this week.
Dallas sends a lot of pressure. They have a really underrated pass rush. And that offensive line, as you pointed out for the Chargers, is very problematic. And that's been a big issue for Herbert. And look, they're not designing deep passes now. They
Right.
can't put Herbert they can't run him back in the pocket and expect him to hold the ball for 3 seconds. They can't do that because he's already like a ticking time bomb from a health standpoint. So everything's got to get out quick. Even a bad defense like Dallas realizes get everybody within 10 yards of the line and creep them up even further if you can. You can compress for Gadsden, you compress for Ladd McConkey. And with that pass rush, it's going to be problematic. And I think the secondary is minimized because of the style of offense they have to run. Again, offensive line and Herbert's health issues.
We'll do 2 more in this range, and I promise it's not going to be just all conversations about low-end quarterback ones, but I think it's just overall good football talk. This is the woe is me Packer fan discussing it here. There was a very large portion of time in the first half of that Broncos-Packers game where I thought, wow, I might be watching a team that can win multiple games of the playoffs, maybe even get to the Super Bowl. And then it all came crashing to a head, 23-14, deep pass to Christian Watson, gets hurt. We don't know what his status is.
I know.
3 plays later, Micah Parsons done for the year. And where I was on a significant high, I am now incredibly depressed with my Green Bay Packers, and I think the Bears will absolutely curb stomp them come Saturday. Yet I see Caleb Williams only at quarterback 17. Jim, this defense is garbage now with Micah Parsons done for the season. Why is Caleb Williams not higher on your list?
No Romo Dunze, I'm sure.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Luther Burden, I don't know if he's playing. The ankle injury sounds like it could be significant. I don't know if it is risen. He didn't practice on the walkthrough they had. This recording is Wednesday morning at 11 Eastern, so we don't know a Wednesday practice report. So I don't know what he's going to have receiver-wise out there. And if it's just DJ Moore, DJ Moore's had 3 big games with his quarterback, Caleb Williams, but he's had a bunch of games where the two don't even get on the same page. So there's a lot of concern there. And as I've been saying for weeks, if the Bears can run the ball all day long, they will. I was stunned. I was stunned they threw the ball against Cleveland. They never had to. And it was like sub-zero wind chills.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but they went out and they threw the ball, which I didn't see that coming because that has not been the blueprint of this offense. But at the end of the day, this is a game where the Packers can run the ball. This is a game where the Bears will have some success. Green Bay did a great job against them last time, but I think both teams are going to play this a little more conservative. And like you said, the Christian Watson injury, I think both teams want to minimize their passing attack and then throw when they have to.
Again, there's a lot of, I think, QB streamer options in your shallower 12-team leagues if you are missing Mahomes now for the fantasy playoffs. But one that I would imagine universally is available is Tyler Shuck, who you have with the green tag at 21 and the final quarterback that I want to discuss. I mentioned him as well on the Wavewire article, the article, but also the show, anywhere you listen to podcasts, Wavewire Podcast, RotoWire on Monday. I don't know what it is. I mean, like I had drafted Shuck in just about every dynasty league earlier this offseason. Everyone mocked me because they didn't know how to say his last name, much less think he was an older second-round quarterback for the Saints. And what does that even look like? But he's quietly been a low-end quarterback one, at least from the rushing part of things, for much of his tenure, and had been averaging 35 pass attempts prior to 2 weeks ago. So, like the way Chris Olave has been playing, Juwan Johnson being a factor in that offense, we'll have to see the stats of Devin Neal and or Alvin Kamara. I think that might hurt things too if both or either one of those guys is gone. But Tyler Shuck against the Jets defense, he might be the answer if you're missing Mahomes and there aren't other obvious guys available.
Oh, shucks. All right.
Good one, Jim.
What I'll say is this. All right. I rated him really low. I gave him an upside tag. And I do want you to ask me about Gardner Minshew after this, though. Tyler Shuck, here's the issue. We count on him throwing 40 times a game. There was a game a few weeks ago. I don't remember the game, but there's a game the Saints were leading, and he threw 20 times. Minimizes his ability. They're playing the Jets. The Saints defense is good. The run defense especially. If they keep the Jets to just a few points per game in this game, Shuck's only going to throw 20 times. That will significantly cap his potential for a good fantasy outing. So I want you to be very careful when you're starting him to understand that's why he's quarterback 21. The upside is if somehow the Jets score some points and Shuck has to throw 30 passes, yes, he will get it done. He has been playing great. Chris Olave's here. DeVele has an injury. I don't know if he's going to play or not. Chest injury.
I saw that too. Yep.
Ruled out of that game fairly quick. So Olave's, there, but again, that's the one issue. I did say, when some of you asked me, I love Gardner Minshew. Minshew's in a great spot here. Minshew steps in. Tennessee, they don't get much of a pass rush.
Yep.
They can't cover. And they're a brick wall against the run. and the Kansas City running attack is not good. So they're not going to be able to run. They're going to have to pass. And it's a great spot. I love Brock Purdy last week. I was like Purdy to the moon last week.
Yep.
Was he close to 300 yards and 3 touchdowns? It's the same thing for Minshew here. It's going to be Rashee Rice. I bet you Xavier Worthy could even get a game here, which good luck with that one. It never happens. But I think Gardner Minshew is going to have a phenomenal game. And we know when Minshew makes that first and second start, he always looks good in them.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Yeah, historically.
I love Minshew. I ranked him at 19 because he's Gardner Minshew. But I put the upside tag because if you're in a desperate spot, he has every opportunity to do well here.
Okay, there you go. I mean, I hadn't thought about Gardner Minshew in that way. It just is hard for me in the fantasy semifinals to trust him to this level. Even like a guy like Tyler Shuck, again, I understand why people might be hesitant, but he's at least done it over multiple games now, despite depleted weapons for New Orleans. Maybe that is the answer, is Gardner Minshew instead. Let's move over to the running backs, and I think again, looking at the red tags here. You're still playing these guys due to the volume, right? Javonte Williams, for example, right. Travis Etienne.
Yes.
It's so they have tougher matchups. So there's going to be a lot of like start, sit. Do I play my stud guy over we'll get to Michael Carter in a second, but Michael Carter is the popular waiver wire pickup this week. You're playing those studs, right? But just kind of saying, well, Etienne probably isn't going to have a 35-point game again this week. Or Javonte Williams, who, let's be honest now, or let's be aware of this. I don't know if he plays the second half of the game on Sunday night, if not for Malik Davis having the concussion on the very last kickoff here before the first half. I mean, Javonte Williams did not play the entire first half after that touchdown. Malik Davis gets injured, and then you have Javonte Williams only running the ball. It was Hunter Lipke that was being the pass catcher and blocker when the Cowboys needed to do against the Vikings. So it's tough for a lot of these guys in the red right there. There was a few questions related to Michael Carter. I'll bring up one here. Tyrone Tracy against the Vikings defense, or Michael Carter given the volume that he might have. Overall, again, let's just set the table for everyone. Bam Knight placed in injured reserve. Trey Benson had a setback on his recovery from meniscus surgery back in week 5. He's not there. James Conner is not playing. So it's Amari DiMercato, who is banged up, Jim, and Michael Carter. In a game that we just talked about earlier, Jacoby Brissett's quarterback 5, Michael Carter might end up getting the pass-catching work and be the primary ball carrier in a game that we expect to have a lot of points. So I think he actually kind of is in sort of running back 2 territory this week if we expect Michael Carter to get most of the volume.
You know, DiMercato only got a couple touches last week. Now, he didn't leave that game with another injury, did he? I don't think he did.
No, I think he did, actually. Well, I see he has a questionable tag on our site. Maybe that's
okay.
That's,
all right. So that one, I somehow missed that one because I knew he came in with an injury and he wasn't used much. So that said, his status will be important here because if DiMercato is healthy enough to play, he's an explosive runner and he could do something here. But yeah, if he's not, Michael Carter, I'll zip him up the rankings above running back 35. If DiMercato is limited in practice, we'll move Carter all the way up into the I'll probably move him above Quinshon Judkins. Probably put him at running back 24. That's probably where I'll move him up to at the end. And might even put him ahead of Jaylen Warren at 23. So that's where he'll go. So we got to be careful and note these injury reports. But yeah, if DiMercato plays, I think I'm ranking them as if he does. So okay. I have Carter at 35, DiMercato at 40. Because DiMercato, like I said, he is good.
What would you assume? Because you're right. I went and looked now. We don't have an injury tag yet. However, the Cardinals have not practiced yet, so we'll have to see what DiMercato's status is. To your point, let's just say DiMercato is an LP on both Thursday and Friday, and then plays, or like is eligible to play, active to play come week 16. What is the split that you're expecting from Michael Carter and DiMercato just from a playing time? Is it 60-40, 50-50? You said explosive plays, but I think if Carter's on the field primarily in a game we expect to have close to 60 points scored, you'd still default to that. So what do you expect the playing time split to be if DiMercato is available?
Carter is most heavily used when they're in hurry up mode, when they're trailing. He's like their turbo back. And turbo means that you're in the full pass catching mode. DiMercato's a good pass catcher, but Michael Carter in his career, bouncing around the league, he's been capable in that role. I think that's where his best value is. Even though this game could shoot out, I don't see it as a game where somebody's up by 10 points or 14 points. I think there's a back and forth game. So I do think it lends toward being a true 50-50. If it was going to be a game where I thought they would trail, I think then we'd be looking at maybe 60-40 Carter. But I think if DiMercato, again, he's practicing this week and he's up, I think it's 50-50.
Okay. All right. So that answers the question then, probably Tyrone Tracy in the instance that DiMercato is available for the Cardinals, which we'll get more updates as the week progresses. I have seen this in a few places, and this might be the only time I'll counter on the player studs. But if you made the fantasy postseason with Tony Pollard on your roster and somehow played him last week, congratulations. Because I never would have guessed that would be the outcome that would happen with Tony Pollard. It's kind of mundane ho-hum season the past 2 weeks been awesome for the Titans back. Tough matchup, though, against the Chiefs. You have them listed at 22. Is there instances where you maybe say, like, you play Kyle Monungai if multiple Bears guys are out over Tony Pollard? Like, where are you at now with what Pollard has been able to do for the Titans the past couple weeks?
3 weeks ago, Pollard had 10 carries for 60 yards.
Right.
It went under the radar because for fantasy, it was another bad game, but it was 6 yards a carry. Then he went for 160 against Cleveland, and I know they lost Malik Collins, which I kind of thought that would be a problem. In 2 weeks in a row, it's proven to be, but it was still 160 yards. You can count on probably one hand how many running backs have hit 160 all year, right? And then last week he comes back, and I didn't think he could repeat it. I feel bad in the start-sit stream that I told people we can't bank on Pollard doing that 2 weeks in a row. Well, he went over 100 yards. So at this point, we know Pollard's a good running back. And I did notice when I rewatched the film on that game, the interior offensive line is blocking a little bit better for the Titans than it had earlier in the year. And I think it's helping Pollard to get to the second level a little bit more. Kansas City is a good run defense. But I think they are going to mentally check out a little bit here. This team has been at 3 Super Bowl runs. They just got eliminated from the playoffs. If anybody is beat up, I think that they're probably not going to play full snaps. I really think them having been eliminated, I think this is not going to be the Chiefs defense that we've seen all year. I don't see Steve Spagnuolo going crazy trying to come up with all the genius plays here. And they're playing Tennessee. They're probably not too concerned about that either. But I really think Kansas City's defense is going to be like taking a breath here.
I think that's the catalyst for the conversation that I would have said too, is the quality of opponent for the Chiefs, especially with the standard now being set. They're not going to make the playoffs. This is one of those that you probably could sleepwalk. They would have been sleepwalking this game even if they were still in playoff contention as well, too. I mean, that's just the way they have played this season. I expect in Travis Kelce's final game, whether it be Week 17 or 18, whatever the Chiefs choose to do, there'll be different motivations for the entire roster. But that's not this game here with Gardner Minshew and everything else like that. So I would agree. I'm kind of with you on that as well. And we didn't discuss it with the quarterbacks, and I think we probably should have. JJ McCarthy for the Vikings finally has another good game. Back-to-back ones where I guess the simple approach works, or they're just playing absolutely horrible opponents, and therefore McCarthy can look kind of functioning. Overall, that's made the offense just a little bit better. But Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, both two guys are used a fair amount. We've gotten a fair amount of Aaron Jones-related questions just overall in the chat. I don't know what to think of the Vikings and McCarthy, because if McCarthy plays atrocious like he had in his very early starts and ones previously before these last two, you couldn't play anybody offensively. What's your thoughts on Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason and overall what they can do against the Giants this week? Another matchup that should be pretty prominently good for the Vikings offense.
Yeah, I love these discussions because when you talk through the rankings, you begin to rethink where you're at. I put upside tags on both Jones and Mason. I wrote this game up actually on my personal notes this morning, and I really think this is a game where Minnesota could dominate on the ground. There's a good chance they'll be playing with a lead in this game. I mean, I don't know, Jackson Dart does some crazy stuff, and sometimes they score some points out of nowhere, but I don't think it's a good matchup for him. So I think this is a game where we see a lot of Mason and Jones. I think they each could see 12 to 15 carries. I think they could control the game, and I don't think J.J. McCarthy's going to have to throw a whole lot here, and I don't think they're going to that Kevin O'Connell, the coach, wants to push the passing envelope unless he absolutely has to.
Okay, yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I believe the total's at 43.5. At least that's what I checked yesterday. Somewhere in that range. Maybe I could be wrong. I think there'll be more points than that. I would comfortably take the over, but there could be defensive touchdowns in play there. There could be a special teams fumble or two that allows for it doesn't necessarily mean yards when I say confidently over 43.5. I think there are ways that the Vikings can scheme defensive wins against Jackson Dart, a younger quarterback. And I think the Giants can get that with their pass rush, but otherwise aren't really capable of doing that. I know that the defensive coordinator coaching staff has been changed around a little bit in recent weeks, but I think it's still one where I expect McCarthy and company and the Vikings to do okay. We'll just segue right over to the receivers because Justin Jefferson sitting there at 37. I agree with you. I have played Jefferson in the couple of leagues that I had him, mainly Dynasty, because I felt like I had to, and that had, among other reasons, effectively cost me in every league where I had Jefferson in the fantasy postseason. He is not even in must-play territory. I think he's almost in must-bench territory at this point. The broadcast, and I thought they did a very good job of mentioning, there were instances where McCarthy missed Jefferson. There were instances where McCarthy force-fed the ball to Jefferson and couldn't catch it. But Jefferson himself just didn't make a few plays that he probably should have. One very easy touchdown that he didn't catch as well, too. I'm not saying play Jordan Addison over Justin Jefferson, but even in this matchup, which should be good for the Vikings offense, I'm not sure I'm playing a single pass catcher for the Vikings at all this week.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think they're going to have to throw a lot here. Now, if you believe otherwise and you believe this game is going to be, heavy scoring, and then that flips it a little bit, maybe you view the pass catchers a little higher. But like you said about Justin Jefferson, it's all true. And you have to wonder now how defeated he is in his mind, that knowing he's the best receiver in the game. He's different than Jamar Chase, but he's right there. They're both the best receiver in the game. Puka Nacua, they all make a case, but they're different. And for Justin Jefferson to have in this season, he has to be angry, and it's taking a toll. And so now you saw some mistakes on the field. Yeah, at some point you're broken. And I think that's kind of what it is. So wide receiver 37 is a statement. That's outside of wide receiver 3 range. That's in the top of wide receiver 4 range. And that means you're probably not starting him. And you shouldn't start him. He doesn't have a game with more than 5 fantasy points in the last 3.
Yep.
How do you start him? But he's Justin Jefferson. And early in the season, he did have games. And, again, it goes to the line. Do you kick yourself if Justin Jefferson goes off on your bench? But honestly, if you remove the name from the player, he doesn't deserve to be in your lineup.
I mean, so let's put this in context. So I am adamant of that, and I always call it the Joe Bartel mistake, where Joe Bartel, the person, gets so angry when I have stinker tinkered and made the incorrect choice, and it cost me X, Y, and Z thing. I don't want to put myself as an individual playing fantasy football in a spot where I get angry in that way. You can apply that to Brock Bowers, who you conventionally draft in the 2nd or 3rd round, where he has proven, despite most quarterback play, that he can kind of get whatever the floor is that you drafted him for. I think we have seen now over a month and a half that Justin Jefferson isn't that sort of type of player. It's just, this is the reality of the offensive situation that Minnesota is currently in, and therefore you can't treat Justin Jefferson like a top 5 pick, top 10 pick, whatever he was. Like I just vehemently do not agree that Jefferson has put himself in that spot, or the Vikings have too. So I have him. I would be benching him just about everywhere, I think, at this point as well too. There's a few receivers, and I want to get back to the Bears-Packers one in just a second, but we didn't get a chance to talk about this last week. Grandpa Rivers ends up making the start for the Colts. That hadn't been confirmed Wednesday, but by Sunday, I'm sure you're fielding a lot of Colts-related questions. I was very nervous about what you were going to get out of the Colts passing situation, and frankly, it wasn't a whole lot. But it was better than I think what Riley Leonard could have done for the Colts against a very tough match against the Seahawks. So what do you do with Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and that Colts offense now with theoretically a better spot for Phillip Rivers?
Yeah, I was pretty close on calling this one right last week. I said that clearly they don't want to get Rivers hit. He's not in football shape. No matter he is not, taking hits, that takes time to get used to taking hits. So he got it out super fast. They got some extra protection in for him. Now Downs, here is my other prediction. I talked to a Colts beat writer, and he got it wrong. I got it right. I said they're probably going to put Downs on the field more because it gives him more quick options to get rid of it. Whereas the beat writer from the Colts said, well, they probably play more tight ends to give him more protection. But I thought Rivers could get it out fast. But here's the thing. I said Pittman will get a few catches, at least because he doesn't need a lot of space. So you could get it to him. I go, the big loser was Alec Pierce. They are not going to run long developing plays.
It's the Quentin Johnston effect, right? I mean, it's the same sort of thing with the Chargers.
Yes, exactly. And I said, like, Pierce was actually number 1 in the league in air yards. I go, that role is gone with Phillip Rivers. So that holds true. You really can't play Alec Pierce right now because he's not like a catch and run guy. He's like a get downfield guy. So he's out. But Pittman is still going to be fine here. Now, Downs didn't do a whole lot, but he did score a touchdown. Pittman's the only one I would bank on here. This is a game, though, where I think Jonathan Taylor does have an ability to have a really, really big game. So I think Jonathan Taylor, I got to put the upside tag on Taylor. They're playing San Francisco. San Francisco is not a good run defense. Okay. So Taylor hasn't had much of he had one good game maybe in the last 6. This could be that game, and they really want to get him going here, and I think they can.
And again, we had somebody in the chat asking, I think it's fine when we're bringing up here in context with the Colts, We had news earlier this morning that Tua has been benched by the Dolphins. Quinn Ewers will be making his first start here. Well, he'll be making a start here in Week 16. I don't know how long he'll be playing into the regular season. We'll have to see what the Dolphins choose to do. You had thought Achane, just from the volume part of things, Darren Waller getting more opportunities as well too. Still, I would play both those guys. At least in the case of Waller, I guess it's a conversation. Achane, you're overthinking things. Is Pittman over Waddle to play, or like what do we think Quinn Ewers will do from a quarterback perspective with Waddle?
Like I said, they scheme up Waddle on a lot of slants and crossers. They get him in the sight of vision of the quarterback. They don't run him on a lot of like perimeter routes. I think these play well against Cincinnati, who's not a good defense. Cincinnati does well against perimeter receivers, but I don't think Jalen Waddle's that. Even if he lines up on the perimeter, he doesn't end up there.
Good point.
So I think these plays are going to be in the sight line of Ewers. Now, I kept Waddle at his ranking of wide receiver 14, but I added a downside tag because Ewers is a complete wild card here. But Michael Pittman, what's his upside really? Because the 49ers know Rivers isn't going to be corking it downfield. Not that Pittman's that guy, but that means the defense is going to be playing much closer to the line because they're going to be playing for a quarterback getting it out in 2.2 seconds. So that's how they're going to play it. So Pittman catches the ball, but it might be 5 catches for 30 yards. That's what you're looking at. Whereas I think in this matchup against Cincinnati, you got a chance where Waddle catches a screen and he could take it 40 yards. I think that alone gives him the opportunity to be a better play than Pittman.
All right, so the Bears-Packers game, we mentioned a little bit earlier with Caleb Williams in that discussion, but we'll expand on this here with the receivers. Christian Watson injures his chest/shoulder, had to be taken to the hospital during the game, travels back with the team. Thankfully, that's good. Matt LaFleur being coy about it and says Christian Watson possibly could play here Saturday night on a short week in Chicago. Then you have Jaden Reed, who was at least by one CBS sideline reporter also banged up towards the end of that game. We'll have to see what his stats is as well too. Let's assume for this conversation, Jim, that Jaden Reed is available, but Christian Watson is out. We don't know if Josh Jacobs or Zach Tom will be available. I think the way that Jacobs has played through injuries, he'll try to gut this one out as well too. But I don't know about Zach Tom, who was the first of the trio of significant injuries that cost the Packers a Super Bowl chance here against the Broncos. So what do we expect if it's no Christian Watson but Jaden Reed's available? I think this actually kind of needs to be a Jordan Love game. I know you said they have Jacobs run the ball, but if he's as dinged up as we think he might be, I don't know if they have that choice. So how are you ranking the Packers pass catchers? And flip side, you mentioned Luther Burden being banged up. We don't know about Roma Dunze being available after he aggravated his issue minutes before kickoff on Sunday. Is it just DJ Moore that becomes the bigger factor? How do you see both these pass catching units work?
Look, Josh Jacobs, I get it. He played at a high level. Green Bay can't afford to lose this game. Green Bay loses this game, they're a wild card, and they're playing everything on the road. They win this game, they still could win the division, and that's going to be a really important piece. So Josh Jacobs, 99%, he's not sitting this. He's playing his role, and he played his role last week. It's a knee bruise. It's a very painful knee bruise, but obviously Josh Jacobs is, a Superman in terms of playing with pain, right? So I don't see him going away from him. They can't. He's their offense. I mean, I know Jordan Love's having a great season, but when it's going right, it's Josh Jacobs. And Jaden Reed, he's had about, 5 or 6 touches in each game, and he's done very well with those. But we've seen the reluctance of Matt LaFleur to ever feature him, which to me, it just blows my mind. I don't really understand it, but I'm not in the building. So there's that. So I think Jaden Reed just keeps having Jaden Reed's role. I don't see it expanding much. Bears are getting really good slot play out of C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Not that Jaden Reed can't handle that. He can. I just think that the role has been so solidified by Matt LaFleur that it's hard to rank him higher than wide receiver 35 until we see a commitment to change it otherwise. Maybe it's the game he does it, but to bet on it, that's a tough one. Christian Watson did really well against the Bears, and that last meeting, didn't he have 2 touchdowns, I believe?
Yes, he did.
And but again, Matthew Golden, obviously not the same player as Christian Watson from a physicality standpoint, but we did see him kind of step into that role Sunday, and I think he will step into that role in this game. So I think that Golden becomes an interesting play, but I'm waiting to move him up to see on Watson's practice days. Again, we're recording this early on Wednesday, so we really don't know solidified what Watson's deal is.
As a Packer fan that has watched this team and watched Matt LaFleur very closely, probably more closely than anything else in the NFL, when I did my waiver wire article, Jaden Reed was sitting at 40% rostered, so technically he's under my 50% threshold. Partly, I answered that question with the idea that Jaden Reed in any serious league is not available. So I don't
Right.
I don't really like talking about those because it doesn't make a difference, right? But technically, he's under the threshold. I really think Matthew Golden is an opportunity to be primed for more volume. We will often see the rookie receivers hit a downside at this point of the season, especially when used throughout the year, because this is coinciding when the college season ends, right? Like they don't have the cadence for it. The Packers haven't used Matthew Golden at all that way. Thankfully, they've had a lot of depth. We've seen Dontavian Wicks win games against the Lions. There's been instances where Christian Watson's been involved. Jaden Reed, since coming back, has been a bigger factor. I kind of wonder if I'm of the belief that Jordan Love is going to have to win this game for the Packers and it will be an offensive shootout more effectively because the defense can't do anything. Golden is going to be schemed more things. And the Bears have not seen what that might mean. And we saw that a little bit unlocked post-Watson injury in that Broncos game too. I'm not recommending playing Matthew Golden. I'm not trying to go down that direction other than say the people who are saying Jaden Reed obviously gets the benefit if Christian Watson is out. I don't go with that. I just don't. I would not trust that immediately. I think Matthew Golden gets a bigger use as opposed to Jaden Reed.
Yeah, no, and it's hard to argue that. It's funny when you mentioned Dontavian Wicks. I was watching the game last week, and he dropped a pass.
Yep.
And I go, yeah, there's Dontavian Wicks. I was just waiting for the moment for that to come.
Yep, I think he was part of that critical interception. The Packers had no chance to come back. But yes, it was behind. Love threw it behind him, but Wicks could have made that play and didn't, and that has been a lot of his career. So now let's do this here with the Bears. Again, I mentioned Luther Burden being banged up. You talked about that as well to begin the show. Roma Dunze aggravates that issue as well on Sunday afternoon, moments before kickoff. And then just overall expanding upon this with Colston Loveland, I think the Bears can very easily pass the ball if they choose to. We'll have to see if they actually choose to do, but there will be opportunities. Keisha Nixon's bad corner. I like Carrington Valentine at a certain point, but the Packer secondary is so much worse with Micah Parsons now done for the year. Is there one of these guys that gets a jump up for you, like a Luther Burden if he's available, or DJ Moore, or is it really Colston Loveland that I think could be more of the intermediate factor for that offense?
Loveland has had fine floor performances for fantasy other than that Cincinnati game when they can't defend the tight end, and there's open space all over the middle of the field. But I don't know that Loveland's role will be much different than it's been. DJ Moore is just the enigma. And I sat him in an important league last week. I got lucky and won. But look, he has 3 games with at least 22 fantasy points, and he has a bunch of games with 3 or less. And so it's just an enigma. And are the Bears going to use him? Are they not going to use him? And then you see Caleb Williams making an impossible throw in a double coverage and Moore grabbing it for a touchdown. I mean, Moore is a superstar, but whatever happened this year, I have no answer. I mean, the fact that he could put up 3 fantasy games like that shows us that, he still is that guy, but it's so disjointed from a coaching standpoint. So I put him at wide receiver 33. Last week I had him in the 40s because he was coming off of 4 useless fantasy games out of 5. Useless games, like Justin Jefferson useless games. But now what do you do if no more Roma Dunze? There's no way he's playing, and Burden's less. You think they have to use him, but I don't trust Ben Johnson to use him. So I just put an upside tag on him. Mm-hmm. So it's like roll the dice at your own risk. He could win your week with a 20-point game, or he could just be a disappearing act again and get you 1 catch for 12 yards or 1 catch for 2 yards and call it a day. It's maddening because there is nothing I can quantify, no analysis I could do that will tell you this is what DJ Moore is going to do this week.
I think it's a fair breakdown. I'm looking forward to that game. I think it'll be a good one. Again, I think the Bears pretty much stomped the Packers. I think that defense is going to look atrociously bad now with no Micah Parsons for the rest of the year. I wanted to spend a lot of time, frankly, on going through a few of these tight end options. Really specifically, it feels like outside tight end 6. So we have that Dallas Goedert line. Goddard, of course, goes nuclear last week. I don't know if that'll happen again, but you still have to play him with the touchdown upside against the Commanders. 7 and onward is very interesting. I've gotten a lot of Colby Parkinson-related questions on my waiver wire article and both on the podcast. I will concede this right away. When Jake Latarski and we had the conversation about Colby Parkinson on the show on Monday, I kind of poo-pooed him. I laughed about it a little bit. I was like, okay, whatever. Devontae Adams being out. Okay, whatever. Looking at the way the Rams have used Colby Parkinson in the red zone, I thought it was more like here's some double tight end sets. You're just doing a bootleg, and there's Colby Parkinson just open. There was one catch down the left sideline about, I think it was like 23 yards away or whatever. It was single coverage, and Matthew Stafford throws to him exactly the way that you would throw a ball to Devontae Adams too. So if nothing else, with Devontae Adams likely not playing this week, it hasn't been ruled out officially, but we assume with the hamstring setback, he's going to be not playing. you're using Colby Parkinson a bit more in the red zone, and he's been quietly getting a few more targets. I think he's gotten at least 4 targets in 5 of the past 6 games as well, too, after not really getting involved early in the offense. So what's your thoughts on Colby Parkinson here against a really tough Seahawks defense in Seattle on a short week? I would hate to start my week getting Colby Parkinson with 6 points as opposed to the 16 that you're hoping to have off waivers, but I'm kind of intrigued. I will admit that now.
I moved Parkinson to tight end 13. And honestly, that's a very aggressive ranking. He's just a guy, but that just a guy has been doing reasonably well the last few weeks. He's had 2 good fantasy games in a row. And like you said, when Adams left the game last week, Parkinson was a big part of the offense. Adams isn't playing. He's not playing. That hamstring injury looked bad.
Agreed.
And if they run him out there, they risk losing him for the entire season. So to play him on a Thursday night after that, I'd say there's a 1/1000th of a percent chance he plays. And if he plays, he's a decoy. And to make matters worse, again, the forecast changes all day long. It's expected to be a rain-filled game. And now,
yeah, okay.
And I actually downgraded Matthew Stafford during the show on the rankings because of that expected rain. Now, keep your eye on the forecast. It's Wednesday morning, Thursday night's the game. That could change, but it was like a 93% chance of rain, and some forecasts were calling for it to be significant rain. So that said, the Rams without Adams, they will definitely play their 3 tight end sets. That will be their staple. And they will do that to control the line of scrimmage and to also force Seattle into their base defense. That's what they're going to do. And so that means Parkinson will be released as the receiver. They've used him more than the others. So I think there's a reasonable chance. And Seattle's terrible against tight ends. And I should almost put an upside tag on Parkinson. And you know what? I think I'm going to do that right now. Because
I love talking you into the green here. I love talking you into the green.
Yeah, because look, Seattle's terrible against tight ends. And they're not going to be able to go into the nickel and dime defense against 3 tight end sets, or the Rams will run the ball all day long and they won't have an answer for it because they have too many bodies. And Puka's going to get his. So Parkinson is a really intriguing play here. And you know what? Dalton Kincaid, above him in the rankings, plays 33% of the snaps. I have Kincaid at 12. If I have a lineup decision, I think I'm moving Parkinson ahead. And actually, as I look at this ranking, Travis Kelce plays Tennessee, who's really good against opposing tight ends, so like a top 7 defense. Probably start Parkinson there.
Only reason I'd say not Kelce. I think when Minshew came in towards the end of the game, I want to say 3 of the 4 targets, at least while I was watching, did go to Kelce. It was scheduled stuff that Minshew clearly knew where he wanted to throw. The interception that Derwin James that was targeted to Travis Kelce as well too. So Minshew, if nothing else, knows where his bread is buttered. That he can have a Rashee Rice, that he can have a Travis Kelce, that there's a floor-ish play with Travis Kelce. All I'm going to say is, at least in the Twitter community, at least from what I've seen social media-wise, there's a hive mind buzzing about Colby Parkinson. This would just be, of course, the week where it's a Davis Allen gets 2 touchdown kind of game, like 4 for 40, and that's the way the Rams kind of counter the Seahawks focusing on Colby Parkinson. Yep, it's just, that's what I'd say. We've spent a lot of time talking about Colston Loveland. We've spent a lot of time talking about Darren Waller, 2 guys that I thought also were interesting tight end plays as well. Let's talk about Oronde Gadsden at 20. And again, referencing the Cowboys defense, how bad it is against the pass, that they have been better against the run since the Quinn Williams trade. If we think Justin Herbert is low-end quarterback 1, there is a league where I am playing Oronde Gadsden right now over Dalton Kincaid and Mark Andrews. So I disagree with your rankings a little bit here. Why do you have Gadsden at 20 this week?
Because his fantasy points the last 6 games, 4, 6, this PPR, 3, 1, he had 10. His big game was 10. That was his big game in the last 5 weeks. He had an 11 before that. He hasn't been a fantasy factor. He has not been a fantasy factor at all. 4 for 60, nice game against Kansas City, beautiful. But that's his upside right now. And I love thinking back to that week 7 and 8 when he had 164 and a touchdown and 77 and a touchdown. We haven't seen that guy in a month and a half.
Well, that's when Joe was healthy.
Right? So at this point, I'm going into my fantasy playoffs going with a rookie slot receiver, call him a tight end, call him whatever you want. But he's averaging about 6 PPR points in 5 games. And he's had some easy matchups in there. Pittsburgh bad against a tight end. Jacksonville bad against a tight end. So I can't advocate him.
Yeah, somebody in the chat asks, would you bump Gadsden up if Quentin Johnston's out? Those are they do not Those are not symbiosis at all. Like Quentin Johnston being out makes zero difference because the Chargers can't go down the field and target those routes anyway. Since the injury to Joe Alt and obviously the offensive line injuries as a whole of the Chargers, Oronde Gadsden's been having to block more, which is in part why they've been having to do very little. That's why Gadsden has not been involved. So it's not a Johnston out, Gadsden gets more involved. I think it's a good question. I understand entirely where that comes into play, but I think Gadsden probably is a little higher for me because I think there's...
I just moved him up a couple spots. I put him ahead of Andrews and Likely.
The linebacker play for the Cowboys is so bad that you can just do those 6-yard dump-offs and checkdowns and get the ball out of Herbert's hands the same way that the Chargers want to. But it's a fair question. The other one, this will be the final one here for the show. Again, I've seen a lot of like start-sit related questions. You could hit up Jim Coventry NFL on Twitter. Otherwise, on the Sunday Start Sit Show on the RotoWire YouTube channel, you go through all these things as well too from a flex play perspective. I know there's a few of these like Thursday games in here, like Quorum's being asked about. Like for the most part, I think the weekly rankings here can guide you into making those decisions if you need to. But I wanted to get to that Colby Parkinson one in particular because he's probably available in a lot of waiver leagues. And what does that look like? But I was a little bit nervous with Phillip Rivers as the announced starter that Tyler Warren would not get enough volume in same way that we were expecting with Daniel Jones. That the way the offense runs with Daniel Jones, the play action part of things, Phillip Rivers just doesn't do that in the same sort of thing. And lo and behold, Tyler Warren not utilized in that same sort of fashion and now gets a tough spot against that Niners defense, which of course no Fred Warner has been out for a long time, but they always seem to get good linebacker play, or at least I feel like can weaponize taking that tight end position away. So what's your thoughts on Tyler Warren now with Phillip Rivers, the quarterback? We watched that game here this past week against the Seahawks.
So Seattle was dreadful against opposing tight ends, and Warren had a drop in there. He had 6 targets, 3 for 19. The week before against Jacksonville, another bad tight end defense, 2 for 15. He had 22 yards against Houston, but he found the end zone. So basically he's getting about 20 yards and 2 catches to 3 catches per game in the last 3. Hard to see it changing here. It's just it's where his season's gone right now. He had earlier in the season, again, he had a lot of 60-plus yard games before the Week 10 bye. But since then, it's not been the same guy. Don't know why. Don't know how. He's a talented player. I think some of the scheme stuff they use, it films out on that. So I think he's not surprising the league. There were a lot of looks where he was just running with nobody within 10 yards of him. Those plays have been discovered. And Shane Steichen isn't that guy. I think that's going to come up with some brand new. He's not like a Sean McVay where all of a sudden he comes up, oh man, they got this. Now I got this. I don't think there's another this from Shane Steichen. So I think it's become more predictable how Tyler Warren's being used. And you mentioned the rookie wall. Maybe there's some of that as well, but he has not been productive, and he's a fair floor start because he had 6 targets. He's going to get close to that. It's going to be short stuff. I don't know how much explosive stuff will be there, but I have him a downside. I have him as tight end 9 for volume, but downside because he just hasn't been getting it done.
Penn State was at least playing until this point in the college football playoffs last year. But yeah, I mean, that's fair. I will tell you this, Jim, and we'll end the show on it. In 2 of my 4 leagues, I'm likely playing against Tyler Warren in the fantasy playoffs. I guarantee he'll go nuclear.
Right.
That is my luck, Jim. So because I'm going against him in multiple leagues, I can guarantee that Tyler Warren will have a good game. I wouldn't recommend starting that off of Joe Bartel's bad luck per se, but I can guarantee you that he will do better than you'd expect, given that he's going against me in a few critical leagues as well too. So I think this was a very comprehensive cover of this. Again, the Colby Parkinson conversation probably about 10 minutes ago, just overall from the tight ends. One of the top waiver wire pickups, I think, still available in a lot of formats. If you have waivers come Wednesday, he'd be one at least trying to grab and block somebody else from getting. Michael Carter probably in that same spot too for the Cardinals. But it was great to go over this with you, Jim. We'll have at least one more of these. We'll have to see what we do for Week 18, but we'll have at least one more of these.
We won't.
There you go.
Already taken off the calendar.
I like that answer.
We won't be here. I'm on vacation that week anyway, I think.
Great. That's what I like to hear. We will not be having the Week 18 weekly rankings, but we will do it for Week 17. So we'll have one final more of these wrap-ups come next week. But otherwise, Jim, obviously it was great to do the show with you. At Jim Coventry NFL on Twitter for any of the start sit questions you might have, or the Sunday start sit starting at 2 hours before kickoff on Sunday on the RotoWire YouTube channel as well. Thank you guys for following along, and we'll be back in for the final time next week.